just minimize that. Yeah, you're good.
And welcome back. Hopefully our technical issues have been solved, hopefully. So now we were looking at the superintendent report. Everyone can have a look at that and if there's any questions. Mr. Bouchard. Yes.
Number 2, building effective relationship. The last batch one, before the yellow highlighted, Mr. Bouchard reviewed the new data collection system with the cloud. Yeah. What's the context around that? What type of data collection is going on?
I'll get Assistant Superintendent Cardinal to speak to that.
Which point was that? Could you please repeat?
Yeah.
No.
5, 1, 2,
Oh, yeah.
5, and effective relationships.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was Director Chris Pirro, and she sits on the VITRA committee, and they have a new data collection system. It's called actually Outreach. And essentially it is to collect any information from VITRAs, and so that there would be a central place for holding that information. So they're just in the process. They were supposed to launch it last year, but did not. So that's what that's.
Not only for our division or anybody who is in the VITRA protocol.
No, it would be our portal.
Our board.
Yes.
Reason why I'm asking, I know in the past, Kevin Cameron have talked about having a central collection data about some of these protocol areas.
Yeah.
So the portal is ours, we collect our data, but we can't look at other, there'll be a point issue, we just can't see all VITRAs in the province. Right, so it's a shared platform across all of the VITRA trained organizations, but we can only input our own data and see our own data.
So, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Bouchard? I just got one, number 2, and it's about the 10th one down. It was working with Edmonton Catholic religious education consultant and Father Paul Kavanaugh from the Archdiocese to write, organize, and record videos on the Mass. I just wondered, is that going to be available to, and who is it going to be available to? These videos on the
Refer
Mass.
to Lori again.
Okay.
So that would be available to all Catholic schools, and we're just simply collaborating. The director of faith is Claire Ganton is collaborating with Edmonton Catholic on this project so that we would all have access.
So different classes could look at this and learn about why we do things in the Mass.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent. Are there any other questions for Mr. Bouchard? No? Okay, thank you. And now we'll move on to the Secretary Treasurer report. Annie? Yeah.
Thank you. On number 3, the transportation management, it speaks to monitored student enrollment to determine ridership requirements for the current year. How is that going? And have there been issues, and what solutions maybe have come from that, if there was?
At the moment, we just have been monitoring, and we have not had any, and may not have the need to for an additional routes to be added to the current ones, based on the old transportation model. But we are actually also reviewing and to make sure that we are also ready when we need to submit the applications for funding based on the new transportation model, and those applications will go into in the end of the floor. So we are currently just monitoring and So we want to engage also the contractors, so that the list will be ready for us to be.
One other question about the facilities management. See that you met with the city of Macomb to review the joint use and planning agreement. JUPA,
Yes.
that's a neat name, JUPA. And I just wondered, are you reviewing it? Is it completed?
Yes, some work had already been done prior to my joining. And what's our meeting was basically just to bring me up to speed of what work had already been done. So that's the agreement that I'm reviewing, and obviously just like the senior engineer.
So I see, I was at the school last night and I see they have a community door and they have it really set up so that if there are community use, the rest of the school will not be, would be cut off from the rest of the schools. So it's good. And the parking lot, by the way, is wonderful. Any other questions for our Secretary Treasurer? Yes, Trustee Taylor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was some talk some time ago of a joint use program in Beaumont. Did anything materialize or are you going to?
Okay, yeah, yesterday we actually had a group at a very early stage of formulating the JUPA agreement, where we just drafting the vision and the goals that need to be achieved for us to come up with a particular JUPA. And arriving on the JUPA was then coming with the other joint use, the operational joint use that are already currently they are already existing. There's just a JUPA that we are working on right now as a planning. So we
Any other questions? And we will move on to the business items, 5.1, the school startup update, Mr. Bouchard. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So in the package, you have an enrollment breakdown. What I would mention is the top chart are the current numbers as of September 15th. And you can see there that the student count is 4,710, where last year it was 4,538. So it's quite an increase. When you see FTE underneath, you see 4,530. That's simply because kindergarten students are 0.5. So that number naturally is smaller than the number above it. The middle box are the projected enrollments. So last January, annually, we have to send our enrollments to Alberta Ed, our projected enrollments. That is what we budget from. So that middle one that says budget projections, those are the numbers that budgets at schools were built around. Moving down the chart, you see an increase, decrease over the spring budget. So we did project an increase in our spring budget. However, we were over that. Student enrollments actually come in over what we projected, which isn't a bad thing. That means that, we're on the conservative side. One thing I will say is there is a supplemental student enrollment grant. So what that means is if the division sees an increase in enrollment between 2% up to, anything over 2%, then we would receive some additional money for those students. So anything between 2% and 5%, we receive an additional $1,500 per student. We do fall within that range. We are about 4.5%. So we will receive an additional $1,500 per student, which is a nice amount of money. We calculate that that's roughly about $160,000. That will be distributed to the schools that have increased enrollment over what they projected in the budget. Also of note that I will mention with startup is in the spring budget, we set aside this past year $375,000 as a class size contingency. So to date, we've allocated an additional staff member at Christ the King, an additional staff member at Academy St. Andre Academy, and about a 0.15 at St. Anthony. So that does not utilize that whole 375,000. Whatever is left over will be redistributed to schools right at the start of October. So I would say that startup, by all accounts, from administrators, has been quite smooth. We've managed to deal with the increased enrollment in the two ways that I said, both through the contingency, the class size contingency, and we'll allocate some additional money based on this supplemental student enrollment grant. I would say that the bulk of the increased enrollment is between two schools, Christ the King and Holy Trinity Academy. Those saw quite significant jumps in enrollment from previous years. We know that in Drayton Valley, the Christian school closed, and that has increased our number of grade 9s because they no longer have grade 9 there. Christ the King, this is kind of the first year where we've been able to see the impacts of their grade reconfiguration since COVID has ended, so to speak. So I'm happy to see that, there's quite a significant jump in Christ the King. I would also like to think that it's a reflection of some of the programming and good work that's been done by administration at that school to provide a variety of programs to students to entice them to stay at that school. Well, lots of good news stories with startup and with the division's enrollment, and I'd be happy to answer any questions related.
As far as Christ the King, do you count the outreach in with those numbers, or is it separate?
Outreach is its own. They have their own column. They're the furthest right in the chart.
The question is, at what date do you count the students? I know we're waiting for 3 students that should be here before the end of September. Is it September 30th that date, or is it September 1st?
So we do a daily count of enrollment. However, we do have a cutoff of September 29th with government. So,
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I guess I just have I just have a comment because what was already covered in information covered some of my questions. In regards specific to CTK and Holy Trinity and the increase there and the possible reason for those increases, and I am happy to see that those numbers are. When we look at right after the first chart, I know it's small, but the blue. So after the second, it's the first blue chart across there, above the orange. When we look at Father Leduc English and Father Leduc French, it does say that there's a 62.5% increase. I understand why that is, right? Because the introduction in grade 7, but what would be the overall increase in Father Leduc?
Right, so the overall increase at Father Leduc over budget, I'm speaking now, would be 21. So 16 in English, 5 in French. So when you see that 62.5% increase in French at Father Leduc, for example, when we built the budget, we anticipated 8 students coming over to grade 7 for French, when actually there were 13. So that speaks to why that's 62%. So we're quite pleased to see 13 students and the start of French immersion at Father Leduc. I hope that answers your question.
I have a couple more questions around the video. $375,000 was set aside to address class size. It was CTK, St. Anthony, and
Academy St. Andre Academy.
and then with the extra 160,000 coming in and the leftover from the 375 will be reallocated based on these numbers now.
Right, so the supplemental grant of about 160,000, that will only go to schools that saw an increase in students over budget. The remainder of the 375,000 that was not spent on class size will go to all schools on a per student.
Okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions as far as the enrollment? Thank you. We're going to move on to 5.2, the fourth quarter financial report. Secretary. And over to you.
Chair, with your permission, I also requested Mr. Grab to join us to ensure. That's the way you see it also. And also I will ask Mr. Grab also just to take us through just brief.
Sure. I guess we can start with the first main area, one of the key board areas we start with is our big light. As you can see, centrally office, we've been able to spend almost our entire budget here. You notice that the schools are slightly low on this, and I believe that is still coming to a coding issue at the school level where they're not reflecting the entire costs correctly. So the cost might be there, but it's hard to separate out any shortfalls there right now. But as you can see, sorry, there's about 83% of the collective amount set aside what has officially been achieved right now. So professional development, I actually saw our schools going over their budgets for it, which is nice to see. We were slightly below, and that's mostly due to our ATA development fund just not being utilized to the full extent in the year. FMI division were shortfall a little bit, and that's because we had 2 months of the year where we didn't have a learning coach, and that equates to roughly about 11.5% of the budget. And that it would equate to the whole, almost the whole shortfall there. SLS here.
Sorry to interrupt. That was just on the central office based funds for the First Nation meeting.
Yeah, on the red section there. So I quantified about 12,500 is the actual dollar amount. That would be is a shortfall from the 2 months missing there. And of course, there'd be some audit and some supplies and expense that would have been purchased to replace that.
Thank you.
SLS this is an area that we continue to see a significant amount of money poured into this. There is a potential that there could be a little issue on coding so that more is getting put under SLS rather than just regular instruction. That is something I'm going to do as part of the analysis on the year end here to figure out what's going on there, because there's nothing clearly evident when I was just doing the initial dive into things here as to why they went overboard that much. Okay, so this is our statement of operations. We actually came in pretty good on the government of Alberta. Of course, there's additional grants and funding received during the year, which explains why it's at 104% there. The federal government and First Nations, that is, we've seen a big increase on the Jordan's Principal Grant. Funding increases were there. There's also an increase in funding from our MES students for the nominal role. I think that was a couple $100 grand as well that increased prices. And so it's just been a very strong aspect of that and can increase funding overall. There. Our sort of consistent with the previous quarters or previous quarter reports, the fees and sales and services just continue to be strong. Whether it be canteen or before and after school care, there's been a significant increase in revenues collected on those sides, which sort of correlates with increased enrollments that we're seeing for this coming year. Oh, the investment income, that's just always budgeted light. You don't want to, it was really budgeted light, but like this, we're roughly averaging about 20,000 a month on interest income just on our daily bank balance. And that was just the area that we're being really conservative at the budget development, just to see how things shake out this year. And that's essentially the only reason that's quite a bit different there.
That's a big difference at 500 different marks.
Yeah, it shows up pretty quick. you look, instruction, ECF in grade 1 to 12 came in pretty solid, just slightly a little higher. But a portion of that is going to be tied into on the support side, and this will be supported in the next graph here for you guys as well. And that's just because I think it's on the benefit side that we just have to dive into that for costing. Oh, and just again, consistent with how we were expecting at the Q3 report, we were expecting a surplus because of additional funding, and that was part of those. We got the approval from the minister on a few fronts regarding this on our reserves. And so it is expected. I know at Q3 it was projected to be about 600,000 as a surplus. The reason it's dropped is there's an accounting adjustment for the change in our leasehold premises for the outreach, because we stopped being on central office or not Main Street here, not central office, Main Street, and moved to CPK. The assets, when it'd be 3 or 4 years ago, I would recall that we did leasehold improvements on the building at outreach, and just as with the ending of the lease, that was written right down of our assets. But no cap, it's not a cash transaction, so there's no money out of pocket technically at this point, because it was just there's a remaining balance to be amortized. And so on this next graph here, I'll just point it out to you to start. It's going to be right in the the 279, 165. Sorry, I can't move see. Yeah. So that's the one thing. If you look at the Q3 report, didn't have that number in there, or at least ended at the end of July here. And so we're just, that's the big change as to where we went from Q3's projection number to where we're at in Q actuals here so far for Q4. Yes.
I have a question about other revenues and facility rentals. It shows actual, well, budget was nothing, but actual was around just shy of 40,000. Do you know if those facility rentals are through joint use agreement income or just general community groups renting?
My majority of it would be community rentals and so forth. There's not a lot that's hard on the joint use if we're allowed to, if we have a community or city group arrangements there, so there shouldn't be much of anything on that, those kind of things.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we really got into Juba yet with most of our studies.
So we had agreements with all our municipalities in the past. They weren't formally JUPAs under the new agreement or the new act. In Leduc, for example, we have an exchange without cost. So youth groups in Leduc can use our services and facilities for free. We can use City of Leduc facilities for free. All our other communities are user paid. So youth or adult groups have different rates as set by the board. So those have been in place and they're being revisited as part of the JUPA negotiations.
Yes, that's my question, right? We'll be having some revenues on this rate until we implement it. Okay, thank you.
Joint use doesn't mean just free.
No. Tripartite ones involve 3 organizations.
Okay, that's good to know.
And as you can see here, majority of our schools are pretty good this year at getting their spending in line or under or closer to their actual budgeted amounts. Don't have a full explanation on a couple that have a bigger debt or not deficit, but haven't met their spending goal per se. But that will be something that'll be fleshed out here as of course the audit is finalized.
Some have spent more than they.
Actually, I think this year.
Looking at Pago Lacan.
Yeah.
Pago Lacan,
A small amount.
yeah.
Yeah, it'd be quite minor with that. It's
It
the
is
total.
small enough, yeah.
And then on just for your update on this one, as you can see, or just scroll up just slightly, just so you can see the change. So you can see on the I think it's the third row there, the 235,876 is the change in our surplus. that we thought for the year. Yeah. Right there, where the mouse is on the screen. You can see it.
So small, yeah.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. Rated here.
So that's the one change on this form. The other change that you will notice in comparison to the Q3 report is under the transfers into capital reserves. We've decreased that for this presentation by $1 million. That's our column. The one where there's 1.1 million there, 1.174. What ended up happening is we did receive the letter from the minister, and so we projected it where we got additional room this year for having excess operating and unrestricted net assets. And that was in regards to the central office.
So, Madam Chair, you will notice that our is we are presenting it to you. We are just as we go through the preparation, which we have the final figures there. I think this just gives you where we are and in terms of what changes maybe in numbers, but the context we remain in general.
Okay, thank you.
That's no standards that I
No, that's good, and it's good to see the schools are utilizing their finances. It's different. It's much better than.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't see any other hands left. Anything else?
Having
You thought the good work? Enjoy time with the numbers there? Agreed. And we will go on.
So Sacred Heart has submitted a proposal for their grade nines to go to Victoria, British Columbia, and so they are looking for approval from the board.
Yeah, glad they put that working on the block.
You like to put that on the board?
You want to share that the board give approval to Sacred Heart Schools request for the grade 9 receipt from May 22nd, 26th, 2024 as presented. It is the understanding that the board assumes no financial liability to the student and or their parents, guardians, should the board cancel and approve.
Anyone, any questions, discussion? I would just like to say I stayed at 3 Valley Gap and toured the railway roundhouse, and it was excellent. It was a lot of fun, and I think we found it a wonderful trip. I was lucky when we went there, there was only 2 of us, the place was empty, and we loved it. My children had a great time playing. They're older children.
And Madam Chair, to that, we got this kind of opportunity for kids that may or sometimes may not have opportunity to do such travels, and this is within the country, so I'm sure there's a lot of good things that happens. Yeah, when trusting 24-hour quit, right, giving opportunity to kids to see things that otherwise they may not have opportunity to see.
And to see the Capilano suspension bridge and go through the mountains on the bus. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. In the Vancouver Aquarium. I was going. There any other questions? And I will call the favor. That's passed. On to number 7.1, Community Advocacy Committee, and really isn't any. For that committee. Administrative procedures, Mr. Bouchard, no, I'm sorry.
Those are for your information,
Oh.
Madam Chair, so.
Okay, those are for information only. Yes.
I do have a comment on AP 318 in regards to the air quality. Just to clarify first, then a comment, the air quality is being added to the AP, is this correct?
That's correct.
Comment is, I'm happy to see that. It's falling in line with a lot of organizations and groups across Alberta in light of our fires that we experience and the poor air quality we experience in here. So I'm happy to see that too.
Yes. The air quality in the home has not been great. Yeah. There is no red gold though, just there. Red fire.
Oh, that was.
Yes.
That was right, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. Yes, Trustee Mallon.
Thank you. I do have a question about 319. The paragraph, the second paragraph highlighted in yellow that's been crossed out. I'm just wondering what the direction was to take that brief paragraph out.
So the strictures in this administrative procedure reflect the board's decision last year to approve Alberta Health Administration of all vaccines with parental consent, of course. So the language that was in the procedure and the superintendent's letter previously were focused on clauses or background that related to the HPV vaccine. With the change in board policy, this administrative procedure reflects that.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding the administrative procedures? And we're on to number 9, good news stories. Who would like to share a good news story from their community? Schools. In Lacombe, we had a welcome back picnic that was well attended. The children enjoyed it, parents came and they were sitting on, we have grass behind our school, which is wonderful. So they were sitting on the grass and school council provided hot dogs and a cookie and a juice box. And everybody was so happy and the weather was perfect. We couldn't, and the air quality was pretty good. So that was good. And it was an excellent afternoon. I stopped by to say hello to some parents and teachers, and everyone was just having a great time. Well, that was good. That's my good news story. We go down to the news.
Back to school, mass, that's it, out. Say no play. It's packed. And, it's good.
About to go to God's Garden last Friday. They have kindergarten to grade, let the grade 5s come this year. So then they acknowledge children that have helped a fellow classmate or did their numbers right, and just to give them a pat on the back. So I was excited because I got to see my granddaughter, my youngest one, she's in kindergarten. She was so excited to be able to go to God's Garden and participate. So.
Okay, thank you. How about in Ledoux? Anything from Ledoux?
We were fortunate to have Archbishop Smith join us for opening mass at Father Leduc, and both myself and Trustee Miller attended. It was a very a great way to start the year. Having Archbishop Smith there. Also today, we weren't able to attend due to our meetings, but the grade 4s in Leduc schools are getting their Bibles. So Bible commissioning mass was today, so congratulations to all of the grade 4s that have their Bibles today.
How about in Drayton Valley?
But good news in Dream Valley. School council was well attended. First of the year, school councils will be. Yeah. Right, school.
What's going, how is it?
Opening mass is done, and I believe, yeah, last week they couldn't meet as school council, so today is the school council meeting. And I've heard or I've spoken to you that we involved to support the school. But yeah, it's the beginning of the year, so hopefully we'll have a good next.
I know our school council, there was 15 of us there. As you said, the first meeting, and let's hope for the next meeting too. And also we had a beginning of the year school mass, and I know the rest of you said, see this too. Some of those kids, that was the first time they'd ever been in a church. And some of them, of course, the first time that they'd been to a mass. So it was kind of exciting, and they behaved so well. It was amazing. Followed the instructions, of course, the teachers, they talked to them, you know, about doing this and so on, and they did so well. It was great. I was happy to be there.
And can I say one more thing?
Yes, yeah, of course.
We're we had our awards night, and it was a very fun evening, and the auditorium was packed. And on behalf of PWL, I had to give out Mother Teresa Award.
That's wonderful. Great, thank you.
And 3 of my grandkids got award.
A little bit of icing on that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, that's great.
And just to add on them, Madam Chair, Deacon Leo, and you all have known Deacon Leo, he's been around the division for a while, and he's still going to be around the division, but he's moved on with Akron now in the post. So with Akron out a loss, but he'll come out again, and he's still around the division. So welcome him in the whole.
We have all welcomed him and everything, and we're very glad that you you vetted every mountain. Yes, that's really great. Thank you. There's no other good news story. The annual work plan. Very full for October. So lots of things coming up. Keep track of it and make sure we check everything off in the board calendar. So we're looking into September 25th for the board south of that will be the next time at 9 a.m. here. I believe it's a full day. Yes.
The cost meeting date is incorrect on this. It's not the. It's been incorrect. Is that the one we moved? Oh, okay,
Right at that one.
that's okay. I just wanted, I know that anyone's following that. Great.
Because it's after the
Should be the
18th, October 18th. So October looks pretty busy. And then, of course, we have the event plan and a reminder that the security. Secretary Treasurer and board action.
There are no action items, Madam Chair.
Correspondence. believe we're at. You will join me in the sign of our faith. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We will adjourn the meeting in 2:35. Thank you for the public for them.